The recent high school shooting in Oxford, Michigan has prompted another cry for gun control. Left-wing politicians and the media refuse to discuss actual solutions that do not fit their political agenda. And what solutions am I talking about? Well, how about the ones that came out of the in-depth governmental investigation into the deadliest high school shooting in U.S. history? That would be the Parkland school shooting report out of Florida, which was published in 2019. Wait, I bet many of you have never even heard of the Parkland school report. And that's because when it came out, it was largely buried by the mainstream media. Let's talk about what this report means for school safety in the United States and gun rights as well. Hey folks, I'm Mark and welcome to the Four Boxes Diner. Days after the recent Oxford, Michigan school shooting tragedy, a Democratic state senator there introduced new gun control legislation. Of course they did. And the Democratic county prosecutor said, if this incident is not enough to revisit our gun laws, I don't know what is. Well, you see, the thing is, at the end of the day, we know that gun bans and more gun control simply don't work, right? Criminals don't follow any laws, especially gun control laws. In fact, you can watch other videos here on the Four Boxes Diner to understand why this is the case. But right now, I want to focus on alternative solutions that actually might address the problem. And why don't you hear about some of these solutions? It's because, of course, they don't fit the left's political agenda when it comes to firearms in America. If you are not demonizing guns and law-abiding gun owners, they mostly don't want to hear it. And if you think I'm exaggerating, I want you to consider this. What followed the horrific high school shooting in Parkland, Florida, in 2018? The answer is, as you may remember, an all-out campaign against guns and gun rights in America. A month after Parkland, the anti-gun lobby held massive gun control demonstrations across the country. The movement called itself the March for Our Lives. You heard slogans like, our lives are worth more than your guns, right? You saw those on placards everywhere. And the organizers lobbied for gun restrictions that anti-gunners had been pushing for years. It's almost like they took their playbook off the shelf and just opened it up in 2018. But this time, back then at least, they got some traction because they put several Parkland survivors out front. Public support for gun control policies reached a record high, at least according to the surveys of the time. But let's fast forward to today. Both the United States Department of Justice, which oversees, of course, the FBI, and the local school district down in Florida have reached huge financial settlements with the families of the Parkland victims. I'm talking about $150 million. That's a lot of money. Now, wait a minute, though. I thought, at least that's what we were told back in 2018, that the loose gun laws, right, no gun control laws, they were the problem that led to the Parkland tragedy. It was not enough gun control. That's what we were told. Right? Wasn't more gun control supposed to be the solution to these kinds of school shootings where you get a psychopath, criminal murderer out there doing terrible things? Well, why, if that's the case, are these government entities in 2021 paying out settlements to the victims' families? Well, it really would not make sense until, of course, you look at the results of the governmental investigation into the Parkland school shooting and what led to this. Okay? It's a doozy of a report, and I'm going to put a link to it down below in the description of this video. In fact, I bet most of you watching this video have not even heard of the Parkland school shooting report by the state of Florida, by a blue ribbon commission. And that's because the report itself, which was hundreds of pages long, by the way, got a tiny fraction of the coverage that the gun control, anti-gun marches received at the time. The Parkland school shooting was the deadliest high school shooting in United States history. 17 people were killed. So the state of Florida, after that, appointed a blue ribbon panel to investigate what happened and how to prevent it in the future. The commission spent 10 months preparing their report. They interviewed hundreds of witnesses and reviewed mountains of evidence. Their final report, which again I'm linking down below of this video in the description, their final report was 439 pages long. That's a long report. Have you read the Parkland school report? Seriously, have you even heard about it? Have you heard about it in the media? My guess is you have not. That's because its conclusions about what happened and what should happen as future solutions really don't fit the sort of anti-gun official narrative that the media likes to talk about. You see, the investigators did not blame America's so-called gun violence epidemic. The report concluded that the 34 people being shot and or killed that the blame for that obviously needed to lie with the psychopathic murderer Nikolas Cruz, the 19-year-old shooter. Okay? Now that statement may sound kind of obvious. I mean, Americans don't blame cars or motor vehicles when a drunk driver kills someone. And if Nikolas Cruz had run down the Parkland students with a truck, would we have seen nationwide marches against trucks? No, of course not. That would have been crazy. But you did not hear this common sense kind of comment from the March for Our Lives or any of these other groups or their powerful cheerleaders in the mainstream media. So what did the Parkland investigators find? The answer is shocking negligence and failures by the school district, the local police, and yes, even the FBI. Nikolas Cruz was an extremely troubled young man, and there were plenty of red flags that showed he had problems. Local law enforcement and the schools failed to act properly, even though they had had dozens of interactions with Cruz. The police had visited his house 21 times, but they never arrested him despite his violent behavior. At one point, 2 school guidance counselors and a sheriff's deputy recommended that Cruz be forcibly committed for psychiatric evaluation, probably under Florida's Baker Act. But nothing actually happened. Even the FBI had received warnings about Nikolas Cruz. Okay? But again, nothing happened until, of course, it was too late. And then there was the response on the day of the shooting. Well, the school did actually have an armed police officer assigned to patrol the campus. This person is known or was known as a school resource officer or SRO. The Parkland report concluded that the SRO's response was abysmal. That was the report's word, not mine. No kidding. Guess what happened? He hid outside the school for 48 minutes when he heard gunfire. 7 other police deputies and a sergeant came to the school, but they stayed out of the building as well. A police captain was there, but she failed to take command. Law enforcement even let Cruz get away. That's right, Nikolas Cruz, after he was done shooting, was actually allowed to leave campus and went and grabbed lunch before he was finally caught. He got off campus and went away. In fact, they didn't catch him for more than an hour after the shooting was over. So Parkland was a story of failures by the government from beginning to end. Well, how can we prevent some of these kinds of mistakes from occurring again? Well, the Parkland School Report, again, which I'm linking down below, emphasized prevention. Things like having systems in place to intervene early with troubled kids and notifying people when a threat arises. But what happens if these steps are not enough to prevent an attack? The Parkland investigators had a specific recommendation, however. They called for allowing teachers and staff in greater numbers to carry concealed guns in school if they receive proper training. Yep, that's right. This blue ribbon panel concluded that one of the best ways to defend against murderers like Nikolas Cruz is to arm teachers who have proper training. And now, do you see why the anti-gunners and their media allies did not want to overly publicize the Parkland report? They tried to basically bury it, in my opinion. And they largely succeeded, because unless you've heard about it and really understand the Parkland school shooting report from 2019, it means the media has succeeded. Until now, of course. Let's return to the recent Michigan shootings. Will we learn anything from the Parkland report in the aftermath of what happened in Oxford, Michigan? Not if the anti-gunners have a say in this. They keep pushing for the same old failed ideas. I mean, look at the March for Our Lives back in the day. They called for bans on things like so-called high-capacity magazines. But Nikolas Cruz in the Parkland school shooting did not use high-capacity magazines in those shootings, right? So how would a ban like this supposedly prevent mass killings? The anti-gunners hate the idea of arming teachers as well. But why not? I don't get it. Leave security in the hands of trained professionals, they say. Oh yeah? Well, how well did that work in Parkland? The school resource officer and the police sat outside and did nothing while the shooting took place, to the point where Nikolas Cruz was done shooting and left campus and went and got lunch. Not effective law enforcement, in my opinion. And here's the biggest problem with the rely on the professionals. Trust the professionals' advice. The police, again, as many of you know from videos that I've done before, the police do not have a legal duty to protect you as a general matter, okay? Now, you may be saying right now, hey, Mark, I want to understand what you're thinking. I think you've got something wrong here. I mean, isn't it the case that the police motto is usually to serve and protect? Okay? Well, That's what I think the Parkland families probably thought too, but the reality is that the survivors sued local law enforcement and the school district for trauma that they had suffered. And what happened? In at least one instance, a federal judge threw out one of the suits. She said that the police had no legal duty to protect the students. And I'll put a link to that case down below as well. The United States Supreme Court has said something similar in multiple cases. Back in 2005, for example, the Supreme Court ruled that the police do not have a constitutional duty to protect a person from harm. So see if you can follow the anti-gunner logic. Police officers are the only one who should be allowed to have guns on campus. But these same police officers have no legal duty to protect the students. Does that make sense? No, not at all, in my view. So let's wrap up. Anti-gunners are exploiting the recent Oxford, Michigan school shooting to advance their agenda. No surprise there, that's what they do. The next time someone insists that this tragedy reveals why we need more gun restrictions, then you should ask them 3 questions. Here's the first question. If the thousands of gun laws and regulations already on the books have not kept criminals and psychopaths from killing large numbers of people, what makes you think that another gun law will eliminate senseless and tragic violence in our society? I mean, hasn't the Waukesha Christmas massacre taught us anything? I mean, firearms were not involved there. There was no murder there with a firearm. The killer used a motor vehicle to senselessly murder 6 people and injure 60. Although, again, the media isn't saying much about many of these killings because the facts don't fit their narrative, because it doesn't involve firearms. Here's the second question I would like you to ask. Have you read the Parkland report? Why are you ignoring the practical solutions, Mr. Anti-Gunner, recommended by the Blue Ribbon panel that investigated the deadliest high school shooting in U.S. history? And why do you scoff at the idea of arming teachers that are willing to carry firearms in schools, when that was really one of the key recommendations of the Parkland school shooting report? And here, of course, is the third question that you should ask. Why do you tell law-abiding citizens to leave guns to the professionals, right, when the police have no legal duty to protect us? Great question. One you should ask. Okay, I hope you learned something today here at the Four Boxes Diner. Thanks for joining me here at the diner, where we serve fresh, hot Second Amendment news and analysis. And if you like what you heard, please subscribe and spread the word. And again, we'll see you again soon here at the Four Boxes Diner.
Orders up. Table 2A.